We're pretty famous in this country for the black stuff, and it's for more reasons than one. This is the Architects of Business, Joe's weekly series of interviews with leading entrepreneurs. I'm Tadhg Enright, and today I'll be talking to Colette Twomey, an accidental entrepreneur who took a secret recipe for black pudding and used it to put Clonakilty on the map. Colette Twomey, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. You're on a bit of a roll right now, aren't you? Because Clonakilty is back where it belongs. You've got the factory in the town.
We have the factory in the town, yes. We've just completed our move now, and we're up and running, and it's great to have it back.
What does it mean to you? Why was it important for you to bring it back to where it all began?
Well, it was very important, I suppose, going back at the time, 15, 18 years ago, we weren't able to build a new factory in Clonakilty. There wasn't a premises suitable for us, and so we had to go for a licensed premises. Unfortunately, it was in Cork, but at the time, it's what we had to do. And our plan was always keep an eye out for something suitable in Clonakilty, and when we could afford it, we would start from scratch and build new.
So that was something you were always working towards. Was there ever a time when you kind of started thinking, actually, it might be cheaper to do it somewhere else, or for some other reason it didn't make sense to go back
it would have been. Yeah, it would have been much cheaper to turn the key on a made premises anywhere in the country. Would have been so much easier. But it's not just having a premises to make black pudding and white pudding and sausages and rashers. It's about Clonakilty is about more than that. It's I suppose the company is part of the heart and the history of the town, so it was very important. It was really very important. If we had only something half the size, or it was very, very important. That was the most important thing to me. That was in Clonakilty.
So important psychologically for the town, but how does that help the business, or does it help the business?
It does. It does, because I think our business is all about the feel of the business and the feel good and I suppose the backing of the town and the enthusiasm of the people, and that's what got us going first day. And people were always, when they'd go up the country, they'd go to England on holidays, they would always take black pudding with them. And there were two items. There was a Houlihan's Barnbrack and the black pudding, and they took them with them. So they were our marketing, they were our ambassadors. And without we knowing, it wasn't any great plan, but it was just felt right for people, and that's how it naturally grew over the years.
It strikes me, looking at your kind of your whole life story, Colette, there have been a lot of accidents, as it were, along the way that put you onto the path. There was no grand plan, was there? There was
no grand plan. I suppose there was a lot of vision. There was vision, and there wasn't a plan at all. There was a lot of accidents, physically and otherwise, but they were, I suppose, a vision. Accidents happen very often the way you want them to happen, and people say you're very lucky and all this, but luck really, somebody defined luck recently as opportunity and gut, opportunity and instinct, and if you have the two of them together, then you make your luck. So we've been lucky. It has all happened, and yes, it's all good.
But you didn't embark on your career thinking, though, you're going to end up selling black pudding around the world, did you?
No.
I mean, what was the early Colette as an adult like?
The early Colette. Early days in boarding school in Cork, and then had the idea that it was going to be something in the medical line, and I started training in St Finbarr's Hospital in Cork as a brain technician, for EEG technician, and the course was 2 years in Cork, hands-on training, and then 2 years in Great Ormond Street in London. But meanwhile, I fell in love, and the heart ruled the head. And after the 2 years, much to my poor mother's dismay, I decided that I was going to stay in Cork and marry the butcher in Clonakilty.
So you married a Clonakilty butcher. That was Edward.
That was Edward in 1970. Yeah, we got married in 1977.
And off you went to Clon.
Yes.
And started running the shop together.
Yes,
and
yes.
He was new to it. He wasn't a kind of a lifelong butcher. Or
No,
like
no,
that.
no, not at all. He had two uncles, Paddy McSweeney and Dick McSweeney, who were butchers in Cork. But he was a farmer, farming in his heart. He was a farmer. But at the time, farming land was very expensive and was outside his reach. And I suppose he saw his uncles making a quick few bob, and it was the nearest thing to farming that he could understand. So he went and trained with his uncles, and for just a short time. And then one of the uncles was selling his shop in Clonakilty, so he went and bought the shop.
And how did you feel about suddenly becoming a butcher's wife?
Well, I remember the day that he called to me at work when I was in St. Finbarr's, and he was saying it wasn't exactly a proposal. We had been thinking of getting married, but he was saying, and how do you feel about being a butcher's wife in Clonakilty? And I said, where? And I knew Clonakilty was West Cork, but not exactly where. So I just said, why not? And that was it.
Sure enough, you were started on your journey. So what were those early days like when you were getting to grips with a business you probably didn't know an awful lot about?
No, I didn't know anything about business, and I, other than doing home economics in school, I didn't know anything about food really, other than how to put a dinner on the table. But I suppose the butchering business was so close to farming, and everything that goes with farming, and so it felt just fine. But the early days in the butcher shop were it was just absolutely hands on and busy in the butcher shop, and in the back room then they made black pudding, and we really didn't value it as much as we should have. With the butcher shop, when Edward bought the butcher shop, he bought the recipe for black pudding. There was a recipe of black pudding in the butcher shop for over 100 years. And
so it wasn't just any recipe?
No, it was a secret one.
A secret recipe?
It was just known to the shopkeepers alone. And so then it was known to Eddie and I. But we really didn't value it that much, because it was the shop was a full-time job, and then there was the black pudding, but people kept on coming in for the black pudding. But for example, on a Sunday evening, you'd check for Monday morning, and next thing you could be turning around and start peeling onions or doing those kind of things. And it was that kind of a, I won't say an awkward, but it was a side of the butcher shop that we didn't think had a future at one stage.
Yeah, at one stage you thought it was part of the past.
We thought it was part of the past, and in fact supermarkets were kind of starting up at the time, so we were saying, if we just blow out the walls and bring the back room into the shop and make it a bigger shop, it would make a lot more sense. And but I suppose the one good instinct we had was to listen to people, and people came into the shop looking for Harrington's black pudding, and they kept on saying, are you sure it's the same pudding? And they were taking it and trying it, and they were saying yes, yeah. So we had the recipe. We knew that it was precious to keep it the same, and that's what we did.
So how many of those people had to come through the door asking for the black pudding before, the penny dropped?
The penny dropped fairly quickly, and we were always saying how troublesome it was to make, and all the rest of it in a confined space at the back of the shop. And a lot of butchers made their own pudding. So our initial idea was, well, if it's trouble for us, it's trouble for everybody else. So why don't we offer a service of supplying them with a butcher's black pudding, a homemade black pudding? And that was really what we started with. Just a few butchers that we knew, and there was no label, it wasn't called anything, but they had it as their own black pudding. And then as that, I suppose the penny dropped, that we had something. And then that's when we decided to label it and call it Clonakilty and do the logo and all the rest.
You talk about not having had any formal education in business at that stage, but it sounds like you did actually have a good instinct.
Good, yes, I suppose a bit of common sense and good instinct. And I suppose the butchering business, because it was such people's business, you engage with everybody coming in. you know the children coming in with their parents, you knew the neighbour who did the shopping for the pensioner next door, or you know that. So it was very much a people's, and you were relating, and the people were very fast to say, oh, you know, no, that was a grand bit of meat that I got on Sunday, but no, that was a bit too fatty, or that was a bit too, you know. So we had that kind of a great relationship with people.
And it was eventually these conversations that led you to realise that if enough people coming in asking for Harrington's black pudding, you might as well put the name on the label
on it, and that's why it was with Tomás Tupper, is a sign writer in Clonakilty. He devised the logo, and we wanted to put Clonakilty because it was more than just the butcher shop, but yet we wanted to respect the Harringtons that went before us, and so we called it, our logo says Clonakilty Black Pudding, Harrington's original recipe. So then when we did white pudding, and just I worked in UCC to devise the white pudding and the sausages. So the white pudding, we put Clonakilty white pudding, Twomey's original recipe. So that's how we operate.
That's the magic double act.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's
the black and the white. So then I suppose the challenge was taking it from, you know, a local delicacy and turning it into the national treasure that it is today, if you don't mind me saying so.
Well, and I remember one time it was coming to the stage where you had to do business plans and that sort of thing for banks, and before that it was just a case of, I have an idea, can I have the money? And you did. We got it, but it was coming to the times when you'd have to, it wasn't just about knowing the local bank manager, he had to submit paperwork to Dublin and all that. And I remember one time Eddie was saying, we have to put a business plan together for the bank. What will we do? I literally had a blank sheet of paper, and I was saying, but like, how do we put a plan together? And he was saying, well, I was saying, what do we want? And he was saying, well, basically, I suppose if we want to sell black pudding everywhere, that everybody who loves black pudding as much as we do could buy it in their local shop. Now, that's not a plan, and but that is vision. And I suppose with that huge goal in mind, that's how everything we did then, unknowns to ourselves, worked towards that.
You obviously found it uncomfortable writing a business plan at that stage.
Oh yeah,
because it was just not your language.
No idea at all.
And do you think do people put too much stock in business plans? Because I mean, again, you were following your gut instinct, and you'd gotten to the place you'd gotten to. I guess suddenly you were trying to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, and a business plan is words on paper. Whereas people, the person that's, it doesn't record passion, it doesn't record ability to work. It can very often record history, which is, successes or failures. But other than that, you can't put it on paper. You can't pitch like that. And I suppose, so thankfully we were always able to get small bit of money when we needed it, but we never expanded any more than we could actually afford to.
So little by little.
So very, very little by little.
And these days, I suppose, if somebody was launching a new consumer brand like that, people would be putting it through focus groups and tasting groups and things like that.
I know.
But did you not? I mean, I guess your focus group was the people coming in.
The people coming into the shop, and I remember one time when we started on the sausages, and we were going to call them. One thing was, at the time, it was the time of E.T. Goes Home. E.T. was the movie, and E.T. was Edward Twomey, and we called them E.T. sausages first, and no, that wasn't going to. That was only a fad, so that wasn't going to.
That wouldn't last.
We got one roll of labels printed, and no, that wasn't. Another one we had, Blosta, you know, we always had a bit of Irish, and blasta would have been nice, tasty for sausages. And somebody came into the shop one day, and can I have some of those blasted sausages?
Oh, that's not going to work. Yeah.
So, you know, we were very discreetly listening to people and taking on board. And I think if you're listening a lot and if you're taking things on board, you don't have to make up your mind by other people's, but if you take it all in, it will help you to create your own mindset. But
listen, so, you know, you were the product of word of mouth, I guess, in the early days. And taste, of course. But how did you spread that word across the country?
Well, I suppose one of the first things we did was, again, the agricultural shows, Cork show, Spring show in Dublin. And I remember going to Cork show, and they were, you know, asking this older gentleman if he'd like to try some black pudding, and homemade black pudding. And he said, but you have no idea what homemade black pudding is like. It's not like when we killed the pig long ago and had the real black pudding. And I said, try this now and see, you know, how different is it? And he was just blown away. You know, it was the old recipe, it was the old style of pudding. And I suppose, you know, word spread. I remember at the time we'd sell then at Cork show, or we sold at Dublin Spring show, and we weren't in any other shop. And when we came back the following year, there were people lining up to buy again. So, you know, it took 2 or 3 years before we actually had it in Dublin shops.
But you needed to crack the supermarkets though as well. Yeah,
but the supermarkets were only setting it. The supermarkets, remember, were just all local shops at the time. It was VG shops, which later became the Musgraves Group and Super Value and Centra, and also they were all the creamery shops were bought up by Spar and Lowndes and that. So they were just so many local shops, and it was one-to-one. Like we put a van on the road. Eddie sat in a van, I sat in a van. You know, so we were just delivering to local shops. You know the shopkeeper, you know if they had an order for a bit more or less or anything like that. So that's literally bit by bit that we got to know the business.
But what do you think was was there one point that was a real big break or a breakthrough?
There were, I suppose one of the ones that we do remember was one very busy. At this stage we had moved the making the black pudding out of the back of the butcher shop, and we had bought a little farm with farmyard houses, and we converted one of the houses. It was a cubicle house, which you wouldn't mean anything to you, but people that have animals would know what a cubicle house was, and we converted that into a little cottage industry in the yard. And I remember one Monday morning there was a phone call. At this time we send on our Thursday evening, we would send boxes of black pudding and white pudding around the country to, you know, people up the country in bed and breakfast, to shops, just a few small shops, or if somebody with a Clonakilty connection had a small shop near them or something, or owned something up the country, we had that kind of a network. And one Monday morning there was a phone call from a gentleman, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name now, but he wanted to speak with Eddie, and Monday morning was too busy, of course, and then he rang back in the afternoon, and Marie in the office, Marie who's still with us, Marie said to Eddie, look, this guy's after ringing back a couple of times, would you just take his phone call? And Eddie said, right, okay. So answered the phone to him, and he said, I've tasted your pudding. I was down in Sligo at the weekend at the Crumlin Lodge, which is a bed and breakfast, and he said, and I love it, and I want it for my shop. He thought he said shop, and he said, yeah, right, yeah, kind of. That was his way.
Sure. Send me your address.
Sure, yeah, send me the address and we'll send it. And he turned out that he was a director of Quinsworth.
And that was a big deal.
Yeah, that was a big deal. And there was another very passionate butcher down in Killarney, and he rang us for the pudding, and he was in Dunstores in Killarney, and he pestered us, and Marie kept saying, but we have no account with Dunstores, and he said, look, I'll pay for the bloody stuff myself, just send it down, I want it. And, you know, I suppose a few passionate people like that helped to put it all together.
Yeah. How much did it help that it was a secret recipe? How much did that kind of build the myth
I suppose
around it? Or?
At the time, it just happened to be secret. It happened to be just known to the Harrington family and Eddie's uncle, Paddy McSweeney. Then Paddy McSweeney passed away. The Harringtons, there wasn't any of them left, and it was just Eddie and I. And I suppose nowadays it's what a lot of companies are looking for, an angle, and they're looking, and there's a lot of stories made up and all the rest. So at the time it wasn't such a big deal, but I suppose the fact now that it is still a fact and it's genuine, I suppose that's why people are kind of in awe of it, really.
How did you come upon it? Because I know it came to you with the shop, but you didn't realise how much of a big deal it was before you got the shop. I mean, was it written down somewhere on some kind of piece of copybook or something like that?
It was written on at the time, I suppose. At the time when Eddie got the shop, it was literally written on a bit of paper, and he just memorised it. But I suppose at the same time, we didn't know. We still didn't let whoever was making the pudding or that. I suppose we probably, unknown to ourselves, knew that there was a value in keeping it a secret. I mean, at that time there was a box of spice, and it was in one of the old Jacob's tin boxes, and a jam jar measured it out, and that was the kind of thing, and it's all very different now.
I know you're not going to reveal any secrets to me here today, but I mean, you must know what other people put in their pudding, and I just wonder, is it even close to?
Well, I suppose we look at a lot of ingredients, and you have to declare all your ingredients now. But I mean, as a spice mix, we are allowed to put the spice mix all together. I suppose a lot of them have generic spices mixed for them, and it's just that
you happened upon the magic combination.
Yeah, but it works.
I mean, you don't make a huge amount of it in your marketing. I mean, other people, I'm thinking of, KFC and the Colonel's secret recipe. Could you make more of it? Or do you think a bit...
We could, but you know what? Well, I suppose, and it's just the style of our business, really. The style of our company, small company. It's very, I suppose, maybe I'm too... confined or too old-fashioned in style, but it's something that has worked very well for us. We don't, if people taste our pudding, and if other people want to sing and shout about us, brilliant, that's great. But we're not ones to blow our trumpet ourselves. Okay. We make a good product, we make it right, and we can stand over it, and we're very proud of it. But we leave it to others to blow the trumpets.
Fair enough. Is it 30 years on the kind of the open market now, as it were?
Yes, about 30 years in the open market.
And I'm sure the kind of the energy levels are different today to what they were back then, to when you were driving around vans yourself. And
it was that time it was very much just a make and do, a hands on, and there weren't complications really. Now you could actually do a full week's work now without leaving the office.
Yeah, and when you're kind of working alongside your husband as you were at the time, that must be a kind of a different level of energy to what it would be, going out to work for somebody else. Yeah,
it was certainly, and like the term of family business, you literally it was in our backyard, and it was Eddie and I, and then the three boys came along, so it was very much just a network. Not that you didn't know you were working, but there was no removing from it, really. It was a lifestyle rather than work, time working and time off. It was just a lifestyle.
Yeah. But then life took a sad turn for you.
It did.
2005, wasn't it?
2005.
Did Edward pass away suddenly, or was
he did? He did. He got an aggressive form of motor neuron disease, and where normally it can be 2 to 5 years, it was just about 5 months.
Yeah,
was the time, and for months he was diagnosed. There was no getting better. It's, as everybody knows, with that disease, there isn't. You lose hope immediately.
Yeah. I often wonder, when it comes to being involved in a family business, and then a part of that family dies, I mean, it must be such a compounded blow, because not only are you dealing with the personal loss of a loved one, but also the fact that your professional life is turned on its head, and you kind of wonder, you know, some people can throw themselves into their work to cope with a grief.
Yes.
But for you, I mean, it was all around you.
It was, and it was all balls in the air, and you know what way they were going to fall. Yeah, I'm likewise. I suppose when you look back at something, you're kind of saying, God, how did we do that, or how did we come through it? But you know, I suppose at the time, you know, you just take each day as it comes. People that we had some great people who had been working with us all the time. They, I suppose, took up the slack and kept the business on the road. You know, and there was huge mixed emotions, and there was, you know, we were really, I suppose, a few months all over the place. But then it kind of, I suppose, Eddie passed away in October. And by after Christmas, like Christmas is a hectic time. I have no idea how we got through that first Christmas. But I suppose Marie and Noel and Liam and those who were with us for that number of years, they continued on. They were feeling the loss as well, but they continued on doing what they, you know, what they do best all the time. And next thing, it was 2006, and I suppose I did have to have a chat with myself and say, look, what are we doing here now? Are we going to do or die, really? And so I suppose my first thoughts were, you know, it's a family business, so you keep it for the boys, and you know, if I can just keep it ticking over. If I can just keep it ticking over for another year, another 2 years or 3 years, and the boys will be more in a position to just, you know, take it away. And I soon realised that you really can't do that. There's no such thing really as a business ticking over.
Not standing still.
Not standing still. No, you're going backwards. You're going backwards because everybody else is going forward, and business needs to go forward, and time goes forward. So you just have to. You make up your mind to do it. Yeah.
Where did you find the strength?
I don't know. I have no idea. I think from the people around me. You know, it was I never thought that I'm doing this on my own. I never thought of myself as the kind of the boss of a company and having to you know, bring everybody along. I don't think I ever felt that. There were really, it was all about the team and the people around me, and
was there anyone kind of suggesting actually maybe you should prioritise something else? Or I mean, I wonder as well, you were a successful brand at this stage. You were well on your way, weren't you?
Yes, we were.
And I wonder, were there any kind of vultures circling?
Oh, there were. There was loads of people with different. They came through accountants. They came through auctioneers. They came through different. By the way, kind of scenarios, but.
Looking to buy.
But I suppose at that stage I didn't want to throw in the towel just immediately. I was saying I would give it a bash first, and then I'll see. You know, I suppose that was kind of where that's where my thinking was. So.
Did you tell them to take a running jump?
And there was one guy, somebody rang one day and just Marie answered the phone, and they said they were humming and talking about the weather and talking about the different things first. And then he came out and he said, I know it was an accountant, and he said, is Clonakilty black pudding for sale? And Marie didn't take a minute, because she doesn't have to take a minute to come out with something smart. And Marie said, it is, yeah, in shops all over Ireland. But the company was staying put at
in family hands.
Family hands, yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Colette, thank you very much. Do stay with us though, because still to come on the Architects of Business, we've still got to hear how Colette and her team in Clonakilty weather the storms and ride the waves of passing food trends. Colette, it strikes me that, you know, from an Irish breakfast point of view, you've kind of taken it over. You own the gourmet Irish breakfast now.
Well, I suppose taking over is one thing, but I suppose we were front runners, really. Coming from the butcher shop, we were probably the first to put a homemade black pudding out there, and the options, the choice wasn't huge at the time, and I suppose we were first rather than taking over the whole place.
I suppose lots of people, as you were saying earlier, have their favourite local butchers that do a really good sausage or a really good black pudding. The only difference is they didn't try and push it out there into the wider market.
I suppose, yes, that's probably it. And when we were making it at the back of the butcher shop, we didn't think of factory with, or a manufacturing plant, sending out. I remember one time we were doing a cold room, putting in a cold room. This was when we moved to just outside town on the farm, and the guy who was fitting the fridge door, he said to Eddie, he said, if you just made it about 2 inches wider, it would take a pallet. And Eddie's answer was, and when will we ever have a pallet? Need a pallet, and I often think of that when you see pallets of boxes of black pudding leaving the place now.
Yeah. And now they're going farther and farther afield. I mean, you conquered Ireland, and you're in lots of UK supermarkets now.
Yeah, lots of UK supermarkets. There's huge potential there. I know there's the shadow of Brexit now at the moment, but there's huge potential, and it was a bigger battle than, the UK is a bigger battle for us, because it's one thing to get it on the shelf, you get past, sell it to the buyer and they put it on the shelf, but it's another thing to create the market for it. So we do tastings and things like that in the UK now, and Clonakilty doesn't mean a place, it doesn't mean anything to people in the UK. So that's, they're everyday obstacles for us now.
How important are the diaspora in kind of spreading the message? You mentioned it earlier about the brand ambassadors, and it's probably no coincidence that, you're going to Australia now as well.
Yes, we contract manufacture in Australia, and that was really as a result of people, mothers emailing us saying how will they get a Christmas present to their Johnny in Sydney and Bondi Beach, and how will they, how all he's missing is the black pudding and the potatoes and the Barry's tea, so I suppose just again listening to people, we said about contract manufacturing. You can't export to Australia the meat, you can't send the meat into Australia, but you can send the spice. So what we do, we send the spice to a small butcher in Melbourne, and he makes the pudding for us. And we have a Cork girl, Cheryl, down there, and she keeps an eye on everything. So
the mix has gone over there, but not the secret recipe.
Not the secret recipe. No. That's all made in Clonakilty.
Yeah,
all mixed.
And pudding has gone beyond the breakfast plate as well.
Oh, it has.
I've had it served to me as a kind of a canapé at a party, that kind of thing. And again,
that probably all started. A chef, Michael Clifford, he had a restaurant here in the Mardyke, and Lord of mercy, he's passed away. He grew up in, he was friends with the family, in Collins family in Clonakilty, and he was there as a young boy an awful lot, and he loved black pudding, he loved the texture of it, and he loved and I think he helped us to be as passionate about the actual product itself, how crumbly it was, and how
how versatile it is.
Yeah, how versatile. Yeah. And he was the first that started putting it with scallops and putting it with different things, and then other chefs, and stuffing into chicken.
The floodgates had opened.
Well, it didn't happen overnight, but it just changed the thinking.
What's your own favourite?
I like the scallops and black pudding, and they're now for the Taste of Dublin. Now we're having white pudding stuffed into belly of pork, and it is gorgeous.
I bet,
absolutely gorgeous. And put a Ballymaloe chutney, or put a little flavour of some sauce or chutney with it, and it is delicious.
And I think somebody recently said that black pudding is a superfood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that because the blood of the iron or something like that?
The blood and the iron, and and I mean, if somebody thinks about it, it's oats, it's onions, it's meat, and it's blood. The black pudding is, and Like they're all good. So I suppose at one time, animal fats were taboo, but now sure everybody is dabbling butter on everything. So trends change, but it's people take a lot of medicine for iron, and the black pudding would do the same.
You must though also have at some points in your history found yourself on kind of low down on on high up on a dietitian's kind of warning list about things to avoid.
Yes.
How did you feel that as a kind of a peak or a trough?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there'd be trends come out, and they would be, the fat content would be taboo and would be, or something else. We were always, it was always, that was always on the cards, that you would go up and down with different fads and different ideas. But I suppose good food is still good food, and a food with 4 or 5 natural ingredients, and a food that's with a lot of preservatives and a lot of enhancers and flavour enhancers and all that, which can be better for you. It's a no-brainer.
Do you follow any fad diets yourself?
No, no, not really. I don't.
All just the good foods.
Just plain. I'm a very, very plain food eater.
I think you've got gluten-free sausages in your range, though, haven't you?
We have, and that's again, there was a bit of history attached to that, because we were dabbling with the idea of doing a gluten-free sausage, and because people are looking for. And one time we were in Dunn Stores, and we were at a meeting, and the lady came to give us a cup of tea. She was going from meeting room to meeting room with the trolley, and the buyer we were meeting said, have you a cup of tea for these people? They've come all the way from Clonakilty. And she said, oh, the Clonakilty black pudding and sausages. And we said, yeah, that's us. And she said, when are you going to have gluten-free sausages? Because my sister and my daughter and we said, oh, well, we're working on it. And about a month later, the buyer came back to us, and he said, you remarked that you were working. How advanced are you? The people at the top here want to be the first to have your gluten-free sausages. When do you think you'll have them? So we kind of said, oh, okay, we better smarten ourselves up and get this product out. And we did, and Dunn Stores were the first to stock it.
Yeah.
But we're always listening to customer demands. The customer is the consumer is the most important person to us.
Equally, lots of consumers are looking for leadership from food brands, and when it comes to tasty treats like black pudding, it could be a case of have it in moderation. Do you think, or not every day, or not every meal?
No, not every day, not every week. But I suppose like the full fry breakfast is a weekend treat. Is a weekend treat for people, and it's not a treat at all for some people, and it's not on their radar at all. But like that, then you can have black pudding with so many other things. You can put it on a pizza. You can put it on anything at all. So you can have it. I think there is still no replacement for good, tasty, natural food. No matter how you can dress up other things, it's natural taste is worth anything.
Obviously, giving back to your community is a big deal for you. You've put this factory in place in the town where the company was born. On a kind of more hands-on basis, though, do you believe in spreading the word, spreading the advice that you've accumulated all through the years to other aspiring entrepreneurs?
Well, I suppose in a small way, I might be asked to speak to the transition year in the Convent Mercy or the college in Clonakilty or in Bandon or somewhere like that. But on a bigger scale, then the Going for Growth programme is for young start-up companies, and I did a few years of doing a group that you have a mentoring over 8 weeks. You mentor startups, and it's amazing how I've seen some of those companies growing, and you would know nearly day one with people with the right attitude if they're on a winner with their company. And the first question I'd always ask people, what would make your company, what would help you with your company? And then most of them would start with funding. if I had 50,000, if I had 100,000, I could use it on marketing, and I could use it. And by the time at the end of our session, I asked them the same question, and it would be not the money. If they had the money, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't spend it wisely. It was skill. It was getting their structure right, getting their systems right. That would be the priority. So it's amazing. I suppose I remember when I was at Ernst & Young, when I was a finalist in 2010, in the first year, I was totally out of my depth. I felt totally out of my depth. And when we were asked to stand up and speak about our businesses, I was one of the last to speak, because I was just so not in the zone. And somewhere through half the people talking, I was saying, no matter what size business or what startup or where you are in your business, everything is about, the first thing you have to have passion, commitment, hard work. And I noticed no matter these multi-million companies, they were still about the same thing, or they all start in the same place. So whether you're starting in the kitchen with your food processor, or whether you're into a big stuff, it's all the same. The same ingredients go into making the business.
Do you see many differences between yourself and your other kind of Entrepreneur of the Year peers who might have been writing their first business plan at the age of 15? I mean, you both ended up in similar places but taking very different journeys.
Yes, and there was a time when I would have thought that would have to be the way that you would have to do it. You would have to go the I won't call it the educated route, because we were educated, but in a more practical way. I look at them now and say, well, you've made it one way, I've made it another way, and it's and I suppose it's great from my point of view. There are lots of aspects. We have a bigger business now, but it is still about making product. It's still about putting it in the van. It's still about the customer, and it's basically the same thing in a bigger scale. But if you're well rooted in the small stuff, you'll handle the big stuff then.
So you've achieved the dream of bringing the factory back to Clonakilty. That went up and running late last year, wasn't it? Yeah,
we opened in October.
Now that that's done, have you been able to kind of maybe sit back a little bit more and smell the roses a bit, or
small bit maybe, I suppose. But I suppose the beauty of the business is you don't consider it work so much, so you can smell the roses as you go along. It's when you look back and you say, how do we do that? Because I'm not doing anything on my own. It's we are, I have the team are doing it all together. So you can't just say this is all work and then when this is done I'll stop. And again, it's lifestyle. I'm very proud of the facility now that we have, and we're just working on now having a visitor side of the facility, a visitor centre. So by the end of the summer, we'll hopefully be able to take groups. Well, by next year's tourist season, let's say, we'll be able to take groups. And it's amazing the interest that people have. And people were coming to Clonakilty. They were calling to the butcher shop. They wanted to see the home, and the butcher shop is still there, and that is the real home. But being practical, you can't think that there's trucks pulling into the back of it to take back pudding. And
some tourists are aghast when they hear about the recipe, and yet others, I'm sure, absolutely love it.
Oh yeah. That's So I mean, I think it will be an addition to town. It will be. We have a model railway village, and we have, Michael Collins visitor centre, and we have, as they call it, the choo-choo train around town. So, we'll have loads of points of interest. So the black pudding facility is just one of those. So
you were mentioning earlier your three sons that you kind of they're part of your reason for keeping the business going, yes, for them. How involved are they now? They're
hands-on. A little bit, hands-on a bit. Well, Ed, the eldest, is very much into the innovative side of things, and the marketing and the he devised the recipe now for what we have, the Taste of Dublin, the belly of pork with the
White pudding stuff.
Yeah, and so lots of new ideas like that. So he's involved in that part of it. Patrick then is doing his own thing. He's in Hong Kong. He came through as finance, but he keeps a very close eye on the other end of the emails, keeps an eye on the more structured financial side of it. And then we also have a farming operation, and Jonathan is on the farming operation then. So so they're not far away at all.
Yeah. Do you think will it stay a family business forever?
I don't know. I suppose I'm a great believer that you can't decide now what you're going to think in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time. Had I thought that way back, I think you can't make a decision. Okay, you can be thinking it, but you can't actually make a decision now for some years' time. At the moment, we only have we have today, but we have to look forward. But at the same time, it's working well now. And do I see a day that I'm not in it? I don't think I'll ever be far from it. So I don't know is the answer. I don't know if will it stay a family business. It's whatever's best for the business as well.
Because I suppose even though it was the right decision not to sell back in 2006, doesn't mean it wouldn't necessarily be the...
Absolutely. And I mean, it's what's right for the business and the size of the business, and what will take it forward. Maybe it needs fresh eyes and fresh everything to take it to the next level. We don't know.
Fresh blood.
Who knows? Who knows?
Fresh blood's at the very heart of what you do, obviously. Yes. Colette Twomey, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For coming and talking to us today.
Delighted to talk to you.
And that's it for the Architects of Business for this week. Thanks to our wonderful guest, Colette Twomey, and our producer, Patrick Hawley, and indeed all the team here at JOE. Thanks to our sponsor, EY Entrepreneur of the Year. You can go to JOE.ie to learn more about the programme and all of the finalists for this year. And make sure to subscribe to future editions of the Architects of Business by going to iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Republic. You can even watch us on YouTube. Check out Joe's other podcasts too, including the Hard Yards on Rugby, the GAA Hour, and our movie show, The Big Reviewski. Next week, I'll be talking to Cathal O'Connell, the man responsible for those big, green, garish tourist buses, the paddy wagons that crisscross this country. So do join me for that. Bye-bye.